So in the second semi-final of the men's 1500 meter, the Olympic champion Koech Hocker was disqualified for jostling and impeding a German athlete, Robert Farken, in the home straight. The USA submitted an appeal to the decision, but it was rejected. And as a result, Robert Farken has been advanced to the final, but Koech Hocker will not be competing. This move, of course, has been met with a lot of controversy, so I'm going to show you several angles and replays to help you decide whether you think it was a valid disqualification. I personally think there's a little more nuance to the topic than is being given right now. The race itself was fairly uneventful until the last 100. Koech Hocker led the race for the first 3 laps, but let himself get swallowed by the pack with 400 to go. As the race heated up in the last 50, the Olympic champion found himself very boxed in, and presumably realised that with a couple athletes ahead of him and more charging on the outside, he risks losing a spot in the final. The top 6 in both semi-finals go through to the final. There is no time qualifier. If you place 7th in either race, you are out. In the race, Hocker seems to barge his way through Farken to find the space he needs to kick and secure his place in the final. Now, I think we can all agree that the live replay on the broadcast makes it look pretty bad for the American. Hocker seems to realise he is in trouble and swings an arm out across Robert Farken to force his way through a gap that does not really exist. We can see Farken is massively affected by this and falls back significantly to not qualify in the first instance. And due to this move, Hocker is able to qualify with a 2nd place. The World Athletics rulebook states that disqualification is liable in the event of jostling or impeding another athlete. Jostling is defined as physical contact on one or more occasions with another athlete or athletes that results in an unfair advantage or causes harm or injury to them or consequently another athlete or athletes. Whew. I think it's pretty clear that Hocker got an advantage from that move as he created enough space for him to kick to 2nd place and qualify for the final, something that was in jeopardy before he made that move. He clearly impeded Farken as well, given that the German faded back massively. Now, he has said in post-race interviews that it would not have made a difference, but A, that does not change the fact that Hocker impeded him, and B, he clearly slowed down after the move, which shows there was some genuine effect there. We saw the reverse situation actually when the judges rejected the appeal of another medal favourite, Phanuel Koech. In the heats, he was pushed by Sweden's Sam Filstrom and consequently fell to the ground. Since this was in the last lap, the Kenyan had no time to make up any space, and as a result did not qualify for the semi-finals. Although an appeal was submitted, it was rejected, despite there being a clear push from Sam Filstrom. I actually agree with this decision here, because Filstrom pushed Koech after the Kenyan ran into his space and cut him up. The push was necessary as Koech initiated the exchange with an aggressive move, and the push stopped Filstrom from being impeded himself. As such, the judges probably ruled that it was Koech's bad running that caused that, something that was backed up by the Kenyan's race history of cutting others up. Now, what I will say in Hocker's defense is that the side profile does make the situation look much worse than it might actually be. If we look at the front angle, we can see there is definitely some offensive arm movement and it does not look nearly as bad as the side camera. You can even make the argument that this was a pushy but legitimate move based on this angle. I still uphold that the decision was correct and actually respect the organisers for having the balls to disqualify an American Olympic champion in the semi-finals. My main piece of evidence for this is that even if you can quibble about how aggressive the move actually was, it clearly impeded Farken whether you like it or not. Yes, the German may not have qualified anyway, but that is irrelevant to the rule and we can't know until it actually happened. The real problem from Hocker's perspective is that he shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. He said he felt excellent in the last 200 and he's the Olympic champion for God's sake. I've been saying this since Grand Slam Kingston before it was cool to criticize his tactics. The American's positioning in races is terrible. In every Grand Slam race, the USA 5000 meter trials, and now this semi-final, he has led the race and done all the work for the first 3 laps, or in the 5k, the first 12. But when athletes start to come up on his shoulder in the last 600 to overtake him and position themselves for the final 400, he just lets them. He doesn't respond and he gets swallowed up and boxed in the last lap of the race. This is exactly what happened in Tokyo here and explains why he was in this situation in the first place. You cannot let a big runner like Nielsen box you in with a final lap to go. It's only asking for trouble in such a stacked semi-final. And it's such a bizarre decision as well. Why do all the work for the first 3 laps and then cede your ideal position when it matters the most? The only explanation that makes sense to me is that Hocker assumes that the inside line will open up and he'll be able to sneak through with a strong kick like he did in the Olympic final. And sometimes it does open up. It's exactly how he won the USA 5000 meter champs despite letting himself get swallowed in the last lap after leading a majority of the race. But the reason it worked in the Olympics and USA trials is because those were races where A, he was not seen as the biggest medal threat, and B, the athletes were strung out with 2 main players getting in each other's way. In the Olympics, it was of course Josh Kerr vs Jakob Ingebrigtsen. That was the showdown. Those were the 2 athletes who everyone had their eyes on, and most people figured one of them would win. The others were more just side characters, to put it bluntly. And this is exactly what allowed Hocker to sneak under the radar and get that inside line. The gap opened up only because Jakob was preoccupied with Kerr, likely seeing him as the bigger threat, on top of disliking him, and therefore moving outwards to block the overtake. The same was true in the USA trials. Grant Fisher and Nico Young were the real favourites for the 5k, and in the middle of a rivalry with Young outkicking Fisher in the 10k. Fischer was focused on blocking Nico Young and not losing to his rival so much that he let the gap open up and Hocker slipped on the inside. It's not to say Hocker's rail hugging doesn't work. It can work, but only in very specific circumstances, and it comes with the main disadvantage of risking letting yourself get boxed in. In a loaded event like a 1500 meter semi-final, which is not going to be super fast and will likely be very busy at the end, you won't have the space to just go through the inside. We see he faced this problem in every single GST race and the USA 1500 trials, because the inside gap won't open up in a 3:34 race with top competitors, especially if you are seen as the main threat in your heat and one of the biggest threats to win the entire competition. This consistent problem that Hocker has displayed in his races is exactly why I didn't pick him as a gold medal favourite. I said he'd probably get bronze, as I envisioned that the last 200 meters of the final would be super busy and Hocker's poor positioning would give himself too much work to do. Turns out I was more correct than I thought. This is in spite of him being probably the most physically capable athlete of the entire field. Of course, the rules are subjective and people can argue that pushing and cutting off others happens all the time in athletics. I'm sure you can point to many cases where athletes were not disqualified for worse offences, but I still maintain this was a brave and correct decision by the judges. The final won't be as interesting without him, but maybe this was all part of his tactic to peak perfectly for the 5000 meters. But do you think the disqualification was justified? I've seen a lot of debate online. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy training.